Welcome to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast, where we focus on the people, the products, and the process of e-commerce selling today. Here's your host, Stephen Peterson.
Welcome back to E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. This is episode 009, Matt Carlett. Matt is a longtime seller who's been selling on eBay and Amazon for about 8 years part-time. And then a few years ago, he brought his life into balance. He is a stay-at-home dad, or as Jim Cochrum would like to call it, he's a dad who is brought home. He is focused on raising his 3 small children under 6, all of them under 6, 2 girls and a boy. He started out, as I mentioned, part-time selling on eBay and Amazon, but then he got into the niche site business, and I think that's a fascinating business that's kind of played through, but he was managing 50 sites at one time. Imagine that, 50 sites. And I think there's some real skills that he transferred over to his business, and he spent some time talking about this. I think there's some real benefits that you'll get from it. Let's get into the podcast. All right, welcome back to E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. And today I'm really excited to be talking with Matt Carlett. Matt is a full-time Amazon FBA seller, does a little bit of eBay, which I'm interested to find out more about. Multiple 6-figure seller, but more importantly, he's a husband, father of 3, and was, I'm going to use air quotes here, brought home, as Jim Cochrum likes to say. And we're going to talk about that because I know that that's relevant to a lot of people. But bringing dads home is a phrase that was heard, and I know Matt's one of those guys. So, hey, welcome, Matt.
Hey, I'm glad to be here.
Matt, you and I've met, I guess it was a year and change ago, we met face-to-face, and we had some great discussions. But I followed you over the last I guess it's been 2 years, and you've really grown as a seller. But, more importantly, you've got couple small children at home, right? I think all 3 under 6, you said?
Yeah, 6, almost 5, and 3.
Well, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a stay-at-home dad. I came home about almost 3 years ago in August. It'll be 3 years. I gave myself a year to get a business up and running, and I knew I was going to leave my job. And it wasn't Amazon based when I actually started the first job that I was going to do full time and stay home with my kids. It was actually niche websites, which were good at the time. And then I moved into Amazon about a month into my staying home with the kids.
So niche websites. So that was putting one up for, I don't know, help me there, shoes or something?
Yeah, I had a double stroller website. And so I would put a ton of information about double strollers and then have Amazon associate links to that.
Okay. And so how many did you have in your heyday?
My portfolio was about 50, a little bit over 50.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating. Are any of them still up today?
I have one that's still up. Because it became an authority site, and I still make some AdSense revenue from it. It's not even an Amazon site. Other than that, I don't have any of them up anymore.
That's really interesting. I'm sure, though, I guess one thing that comes to mind immediately is, the ability to do that and the steps to do that, that process probably translated really well into an eBay and an Amazon business.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I actually cut my teeth with eBay and Amazon about 8 years ago when I really got the entrepreneurial bug. I started doing used CDs and DVDs on eBay. And then after about 2 years of that, I moved everything over to Amazon. So I was doing pretty well with that on Amazon for quite a few years, and I kind of got burned out because my career was pretty stressful at the time. So I took about a year off and then got into the niche websites and then back onto Amazon.
Now, the other thing I do want to mention about Matt is Matt had a course that came out, I guess it's been a year, maybe 2 years, with Jessica LaRue, and you were amazingly successful at it. I remember, talking with you about it, and you really had a lot of success with that. Have you done anything since then, or are you in the process of doing anything like that?
I haven't, and I haven't I haven't. I don't have anything coming up either. I retired the course. We retired the course in January or February, and I have thought a lot about updating it and relaunching it, but I have not. I seriously have just not had time to do it.
Well, you got a couple little things keeping you busy under 6, right? That kind of keeps you busy. I guess this is, I don't remember how many interviews I've done so far, but there are a lot of common themes, and one of them is, you go, but then eventually as you mature in this business, you do find a place to level off, not a comfort level, I wouldn't call it that, but maybe a tolerance level. Is that a decent phrase? Can you relate to that?
Definitely, yeah. When I first started, I wanted to get really big and sell as much as I could. Now, for me, it's more of a lifestyle. Like, I want to grow, but I want to grow smart, and I want to be able to I want to be able to have a life and job where I can take care of my kids. I don't have to work every single day, 8 hours a day. I can enjoy my kids. I can make every one of their recitals or whatever at school. So it's really turned into, instead of go and see how many stores I can hit in a week and how much stuff I can ship out, it's to work smarter and really maximize my time.
I'm assuming it was just an easy snap of the fingers and you were automatically successful, right?
Oh.
Is that the way it went?
Yeah.
So let's face it, we all hit some struggles. And so give me one one hurdle that really was a big issue for you. Don't tell us how you got over it, but bring us up to that point where you were when you were struggling.
Well, I sort of struggled right off the bat because when I started this about a month into coming home from my job. So I have 3 little ones at home, all under the age of 5 at the time. And I decided that I wanted to do this. I actually heard the interview with Jim Cochrum and Brett Bartlett, and that really triggered something in me that I wanted to pursue this. And so on any free time I had, I would go out to the stores and start sourcing. And I realized that wasn't super effective for me because there's no way I could lug 3 kids to the stores. So that became a major hurdle for me that I had to overcome.
All right. So you did hear Jim Cochrum early on, and I remember us talking a little bit about that. I guess it was a year and change ago, and I remember that, and I thought to myself, I was not quite familiar with him and his whole program. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to hear a little bit more about that, and then how you were able to get past that point. Okay? So we'll take a quick break. Be right back. Today's podcast is brought to you by Seller Essentials, essential business solution for online sellers. Whether you sell general merchandise on Amazon or eBay, private label your own product, or if your focus is selling books, wholesale products, or liquidation lots, let Seller Essentials be your online resource for all things e-commerce. Essential resources, essential solutions, Seller Essentials, the Internet's premier venue for online professional. Visit selleressentials.com for more information. That's selleressentials.com. Before we jump back into the podcast, I wanted to mention a couple of things that Matt's going to talk about here. One key item that I think he really talks about, Matt's an online sourcer, and he said, really, don't consider using an outside processing company. There are lots of them. Everybody thinks that's the hot new thing. You should use one, but you need to be scaled enough to be able to use one. And he really recommends when you become an expert in online sourcing and you're starting to buy some volume, then it really makes sense. He talks about using one for tax-free status and some of the benefits of it. I think there's some really great advice. Again, though, jump when you're ready. Don't jump in advance. It's a real heavy cost that you're probably not going to be prepared to. And then finally, the last segment, he talks about using VAs and how that has taken his business to the next level. And he also mentions that it doesn't have to be somebody in another country. It could be somebody in your neighborhood. But the real benefit is getting back your time. So let's jump back into the podcast. And we're back, and we're talking with Matt Carlett. And just before the break, he was talking about his experience hearing from Jim Cochrum and Brett Bartlett, two mega sellers or mega on e-commerce people at this point. And you got inspired. So you went out guns blazing, ready to go, and you realized that, hey, this isn't quite as easy when you're carrying 3 small kids with you to a store and trying to do that. That's where we were, right? So let's take it from there and how you were able to overcome that hurdle.
Well, after just a couple times of going out with my kids and realizing that wasn't going to work, I knew that there had to be a way that I could go to the stores, but only as my time would allow. So I started hitting the internet hard. And I started with eBay, buying things from eBay and sending them into Amazon FBA.
So wait, let's pause there a second. So this is your niche experience coming back, and this is, to me, the first place that you're mentioning where it really became useful. I can just see that there's a relationship there.
Yeah, it definitely did. I had a little bit of experience with drop shipping on Amazon, very, very light drop shipping. And so between that, I ramped that up a little bit, and then I started buying things off of eBay to sell on Amazon. And that's how I was like, okay, well, this has got to be a way to get me started, to get some cash flow moving.
And did you, I don't know. I'm a target guy. I'm not a store target. I mean, goal oriented. Set. Here's how many items I want to ship in, or here's how much money I want to spend, or here's how much in sales I want to get. Did you take that same approach to eBay buying, or just online buying in general, or how did you go about that?
I didn't do that at all. Basically, I'm actually not really good at setting goals and stuff like that. It's something that I work on continuously. But basically, I would set in my mind how much I had to spend for the week or for the day and I would try and spend that. I'd try to find enough to make that goal, I guess you could say, of spending X amount of dollars on profitable inventory.
So you would just back into it backwards, right? So that if you buy something and it's got a 50% return, right, or margin, right, you can back into, okay, if I spend this amount of money, I'm really getting this number of items, and that should give me X amount of dollars profit in the future.
Exactly.
That sounds to me like you're actually really good at goal setting. You might not call it that, but that's actually very smart. I think that's a tip that a lot of people seem to get stuck on again, right? So, I've seen people, in my first introduction to this podcast, I mentioned to people selling 100 items on eBay in a week. That's a pretty big accomplishment. That's a lot of work, right? Yeah. I think you could relate to that. But selling 100 items on Amazon in a day, it's a good deal. But in a week, not really a big deal.
Right.
And so when people are trying to figure out, hey, I want to make, $1,000 a month, all they have to do is that math that Matt just talked about, working backwards and saying, okay, if I spend this amount and I know I'm going to get this return, all I have to do is buy X number of units. And if you break that down into those bite-sized pieces, you can attack it, right? And if you do that, were you doing it 7 days a week or a couple days a week?
No, I was doing it 7 days a week. Anytime I would have downtime, I would source online.
Now, right, that you're full-time and you got kids and you're the stay-at-home dad, you have a routine, right? You have to have a routine with kids. So back then, 7 days a week, whenever you had spare time, what's it like now?
Well, now it's easier. It's easier, and it's easier in a lot of ways, and it's harder in a lot of ways. I have a daughter who's in first grade now, going into second. I have another one who's going to be in kindergarten this next year, but she was in daycare 2.5 hours a day each day. So that freed up a lot of my time. But my son is also older now. So, when I first started, my son was just a baby. So he was pretty easy to take care of if I was, he was sleeping or he was just in my lap most of the time when I first started, but now he's on the go all the time, and that makes things a little more difficult now. But my time is slowly getting freed up because my other kids are going to school.
Here's another question, because I know you're an online arbitrage expert, right? That's what your course was on. And I'm struggling a little bit trying to keep up with the technology that seems to be coming out every day. There's something new. There's a new scraper. There's a new ranking software. There's a new tracking. I'm confused. How about somebody who's been doing it a lot longer? How's this working for you?
There's a few things that I use. I try everything out. I try to, at least, and give it a shot. The way that my VAs find product is there's no program that they use or anything. They use just tools like Keepa and the Amazon calculator and stuff like that. I have not found something that I'm using on a daily basis that I really like.
You mentioned VAs, so let's explain what that is, right? So you share these VAs. These are sourcing VAs only?
Yeah.
They're not buying, right? They're just sourcing.
They're just sourcing, yeah.
Okay, so they're identifying. And you share this with 3 other people, so there's a group of 4?
Yep.
How long have you been doing that?
Since about October, I think.
Okay, and so you're in a group with others. How's that dynamic work with 4 people all wanting to buy the same products, in essence?
Well, it's actually worked out really well because we all have different criteria that we look for. Our buying level or buying criteria isn't the same. So it's actually, there's a few things that we show up on, the same products, but it's actually worked really well. I thought that, when you have 4 or 5 people that you might get a lot of overlap, but it hasn't been that way.
Now, and you're one of the few in a group setting that are using multiple VAs. I know of a person who uses multiple VAs for himself, but how does that work with 4 people? Are there 4? Do they merge the files? Is there one master VA that pulls this information together and sends it out to the 4 of you? I'm just interested in the semantics of it.
Yeah, they all work off of a master spreadsheet, and it all gets added. One person adds. Well, they all work off of a spreadsheet, and one person adds it to one big spreadsheet. So we just see one spreadsheet with each VA's name, and we can open up the page, and it'll show us what they brought us for that day, and it's separated out by date. Yeah, it's actually pretty easily. When we first started, we had all separate pages, and we had more VAs too. So each VA would have their own page and their own spreadsheet, so we'd have to look through, I think at the time it was 7 spreadsheets, and that just didn't work. It just wasn't efficient enough. So we have one person who takes some time and puts it all into one spreadsheet for us.
And is it a Google Drive share or a Dropbox?
It is. It's Google Drive.
Okay. So really fascinating. And so are they able to give you the ASINs and then where to buy it and the price and all the ROI, all that information?
Yep. All that.
That's terrific. And do you find yourself, let's dig down a little deeper, if you could, if you're willing to answer. How many days a week are you buying from that list?
Oh, at least, I definitely won't buy from it every day, but at least twice a week. Sometimes I'll go for a week and I won't even look at it. Like for the past few weeks, I've been doing a lot of RA because there's a retail arbitrage. So there's been a lot of deals out there that I know I've been able to get in abundance. So to be honest, I haven't even looked at it. I didn't look at it at all last week. But I'll go through and look at it this week, and I'll be able to go back so many days, and I'm still able to get, because there's so few of us, I'm still able to pick up most of those deals too.
And the fact that it's been working since October is just really impressive. I mean, I think that there's just so many groups that start up and fizzle pretty quick, or you find that the stuff on there is the same stuff that's on pretty much all the other lists. Yeah. For one going this long, that's a really big accomplishment. Kudos to you guys.
Thank you. It's I got brought into the group, asked to be in it. They had already established it, and it's really worked out great. I'm pretty happy with it.
I'm in a bunch of groups where I have a partnership with another person, well, two other people, as a matter of fact. And I think the key is you have to be honest, and you have to be open, and you have to be, fair. I'm all about fairness and reasonableness, and I think it sounds like you've handled one of those, or you've gotten in one of those groups. So there's the other tip, right? So you got to find people that you really can get along with and be reasonable.
Yeah, and it's got to be people that I'm in a lot of groups too. But I'm in 2 masterminds, and it's all people that, I get along with and I can trust and work well with. And I think that's really important.
Are you using any other technology or software to help advance your business?
Well, I use Inventory Lab, which I love. I also use... what's it called? GoDaddy Accounting. And
okay.
I use that. I've always used that. So I use that and Inventory Lab because I can pull with GoDaddy. I can pull the rest of the things besides Amazon, like eBay and things like that. It pulls over into GoDaddy Accounting pretty easily.
You and I talked a little bit about eBay, and I'm interested in discussing a little bit about eBay. So before this year, right, I guess last year, you were still using eBay to sell private label products. So explain to us about what that means.
Yeah, I have to give it up to Andy Slamans because he helped me a lot to get into the private label game here. So I launched a few products on Amazon, and I sell them on eBay also and have Amazon fulfill them for me.
Are you using Joe Lister to bring your stuff over?
I'm not. I'm actually going to take a look at that because that software is getting a lot of good reviews, and it looks like something that I would really be interested in.
So I'll add that to my to the show notes, the Joe Lister program. I'm not familiar with it either. We have a lot of items on eBay, so I'm not certain how I would make that work without maybe getting a second eBay account because we have so many SKUs on Amazon too. I'll also create a link to Andy Slamans. Andy Slamans was the first my first interview, 001 episode. If you're interested in finding more about private label, I too am in his group, and it's just so amazing that him and Maggie Kusin, they are there, and they've been there. I've been in it. I was one of the first members of the group way back, and watching them answer questions today is the same as it was when they started. I mean, they're always there, and I'm always like, what are you doing? You're sitting there waiting for something? I mean, my God, you got to take a break at some point.
I tell you what, I have the utmost respect for Andy. I don't know Maggie that well, only the questions that she's answered in the group, and she's phenomenal. After CES last year, I found a product that I thought would be great to private label, and I knew Andy was coming out with this course, and I didn't know him very well, and I messaged him and I said, hey, listen, I know you're coming out with this course, and I'm going to join the course. I'll give you the money now, but I think I found a good product. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? I promise not to barrage you with questions. And he couldn't have been better. He was fantastic, and of course he didn't make me pay for the course then. He helped me out just so much before the course even started. It was great. He really was there and helped me.
That's just really so awesome. So you've been a stay-at-home dad now for 3 years, right? Full time.
Yep.
And so your lifestyle you're working towards a lifestyle, really just a lifestyle. I wouldn't call it a lifestyle business or personal, right? It's really just an overall lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think most people really want that. We all chase the $1 million and then realize, I don't want to give that much up. I'm not willing to give that much up after a while. You've really done it. So take us to that moment when you knew I guess it was after the niche website business, but when did you know that you really had it figured out today, as much as you can figure it out?
Well, when probably like about this time, my first year into being home with my kids, I really started to kind of figure out the business how I wanted it to be, and sourcing got to be easier and got to be not easier but more. I got to know what to look for, and I worked real closely with Dwayne Malick at the time, and he and I worked together, and we kind of pushed each other, who could get to 10K first, who could get to 5K first, per month, and we would help each other get there. And by that summer, I was like, this is really going to work for me, and I'm going to be able to pay my bills and make this a lifestyle thing.
I will put a link to Dwayne. I'm in Dwayne's coaching group. I've been in it for, I guess, quite a long time, and I stay in it just because an amazing amount of knowledge. I just spoke not that long ago in Baltimore at an event, and Dwayne was out in the audience, and people were asking me questions. I'm like, Dwayne Malick is the person that can answer that question so much better than I can. I probably got him a ton of customers that day. But he just knows so much of the details, and he's just so willing to share it. I really appreciate that. But you made a statement. You figured out what you wanted the business to be. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot and say, give us a little bit of an outline of what that is, if you could.
I basically want to be able to run my business, pay my bills. I'm not looking... At this point, I'm not looking to be, extremely wealthy. I want to be able to spend time with my family, run my business, and live my life. And I don't want my business to be, my entire identity. I don't want to have to miss things because, I don't want to miss my kids' sports things because I'm working. I want to be able to run my business and have my family life.
It's funny you say that, and it's going to be one of my quotables about you. Don't want the business to be your, say it again, because you said it so well. Don't want the business to be your identity?
Yeah, my entire identity. I want it to be, a part of my life that I'm able to, that the way I'm able to make money, but also on my terms, that I can spend my time with my family and never have to miss anything.
It's one of those things I don't like when I go to a party or whatever. Oh, what do you do for a living? That's the first question they ask you. Instead of saying, man, do you have kids? Or do you, tell us about, what your hobbies or what you enjoy in life. We identify for some reason with this job, and then we judge each other on that. And it's just so wrong,
It is, and it happens a lot. I mean, it still happens. People who don't know what I do, or, you tell them, oh, I sell goods on Amazon. Well, that's like a job. Yeah, it's a job.
It's a third eye in the middle of my head, buddy. Right? So, looking back at it, what would you say, how did you get to this place, right? Was there something early on in your life, in your career? Were you around entrepreneurs? To be able to figure it out, like I said, I think it's a much bigger deal. Most people just go in, oh, this is easy, and they're going to kill it. And then they realize, oh, my God, this is really hard work, right? And then finding that balance, I think, people do get stuck, but because they're getting stuck because they're not at $1 million, instead of saying, wait, this is really where I want to be, they'd realize they're way more than halfway there, and it's really not that far of a step. Yeah. What would be in your background that would have allowed you to figure that out?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I've always known since I started working, when I was like 16, 17, that I didn't like working for other people. I didn't like being here, spend 8 hours doing this for me. It wasn't like, it just didn't fit me. But I also didn't know I didn't know what to do to not have to do, because it was the normal thing that everybody did. You went to work and I didn't know how to become an entrepreneur, I guess. And then one day it just, I started reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and 4 Hour Work Week. And I was like, there's got to be a better way than this. And so I set out to find it because I was not happy working for other people. I just wasn't.
I think most people talk about it, but you actually did it. I think that's a really big deal. I mean, it really is. And I think, what would you say to somebody brand new who's feeling the same way? They're getting up, driving to work, against the commute, hating life, hating every day when they go there. Where would you tell them to start?
You got to find out what, it's so cliche, but you got to find out what your passion is. And it's not like everybody can turn their passion into something that makes money, because I don't actually believe that really. I believe you got to have a passion and desire to do something, and it's got to be something that makes you happy. You got to find that and then discover if it's something that will make you money and you can make a living doing. And you got to have the hustle. You got to have the drive to do it.
Yeah, the hustle is just so critical. You just got to, what do they say? The difference between good and great is 10%. I mean, that's really all it is. You just got to do 10% more every single time.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard at first. It really is. As most of the people who are probably listening to this know that doing the side hustle is hard. It really is.
Well, you got multiple side hustles, or you did, right? You had, being a husband, being a father, being, having a full-time job, and then doing this on the side. Those 3 other things can be side hustles when you have a pretty strong full-time job. So is there anything that right now that you're struggling with?
I always struggle with balance. That's one of the things that I constantly struggle with. And also control, giving up control of any parts of my business. Hiring a third-party company to fulfill things, which I just did for the first time ever. And it's hard. It's a hard decision for me to do things like that.
Wow, let's talk about that. So you are using one of the services out there. You don't have to mention the one, because there, I think, are 6 or 8 I know of right now. What led you to that place? What led you to that? How did you decide now is the time for me to move to that?
Well, I just decided that, I do so much online that, a lot of it could go someplace else to do. And also my private label stuff. I mean, there's things that I buy that just have to be labeled, and that's it. And I thought maybe I could send them to a fulfillment company just to label them and ship them back out. It just would free up some of my time.
So with the private labels where you started with it, or was the online arbitrage where you started with it?
No, online arbitrage.
Okay,
right.
So this is I'm looking for a tip to move people forward. Mm-hmm. So you're suggesting when you start getting heavier into online arbitrage, which you have to if you're going to scale at any level, that's the time to consider using one of those services.
For sure.
Smart.
Yeah.
Really smart.
Yeah, and it's a wonder that I didn't do it at least a year ago. But like I said, that's what I struggle with, is giving up control.
And I'm not so sure a year ago it would have worked as well, because I think most of the services that are out there now are new. Yeah. There's 1 or 2 that have been around a long time, but they were struggling, and they've struggled a little bit as they tried to handle some of the growth, because the growth is exploding for them too, and that process is tough when you're bringing in that much more product. I think that all these other ones, they're all within the last 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure you could have. One of the cool stories I heard from somebody was they use a service. They split it between, I think, 3 people, and it's a house that they use to distribute out of. And it's really interesting, and they've been doing that for a couple of years. I think that's really an interesting model, too.
Yeah, that's a great. What really sold me into doing it was the whole tax-free option.
Yeah. Okay, so you're referring to when you take have your inventory go to a state that does not collect sales tax, right? And that allows you to just buy without having to worry about showing sales tax license and all that kind of jazz, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. And I know that a lot of people are talking about that. And I think there are, 4 or 5 states that I see that have distribution processing centers geared specifically for that reason. So today, right now, it's a way to go. So you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad and 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss, who has a TV show now. I don't know if you know that. Mm-hmm. Are you any other books or podcasts that you could recommend that you think our listeners would benefit from?
The ones that I really like, I listen to Scott Volker's The Amazing Seller. I think that he has some great information. Andy's Spreecast. And Dwayne Zooms. Those are the ones that I try and hit every week.
Okay, and I have a link. Now I already have Scott's out there, and I have a link for Andy, and I'll put a link for Dwayne and his fast turn coaching, because I agree with you. I think there's nuggets, and more importantly, you can ask a question. So if you're left with a burning question, you have an in to ask a question. So I think those are really good examples. Hey Matt, what we're doing now is we're looking for a place, a process, something that can take people who are kind of stuck, right? They're at that $10,000 or $20,000 level, and they want to get to that next level. And so I'm asking for that tip, that trick, that shortcut, I don't know if there is such a thing, that they can use to move their business forward.
I would start with VAs or just another employee to do your online arbitrage. Even if you're using some sort of scraper, or if you use another online product that gives you items to possibly look at to buy, they can vet those items for you, and it just will save you a ton of time.
Smart. And you'd mentioned earlier that you don't have to have somebody from another country. It can be somebody local.
Absolutely.
Well, how can our listeners find out more information about you, or how can they get in touch with you if they want to find out a little bit more?
They can contact me on Facebook. I don't have a webpage or anything, but I do have Facebook, and you can contact me anytime.
Okay, and I'll have that link in there too. Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time today. There's just such great information, and I just think people are really going to benefit from hearing about somebody who was brought home, as Jim Cochrum would say. Just a great inspirational story. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. All the links mentioned today can be found at ecommercemomentum.com under this episode number. Please remember to subscribe and like us on iTunes.